All right, we're starting a new chapter. It's chapter 2. This is 2.1. Um, and in this chapter, by the end of the second chapter, we should be able to take fractions and make it into a decimal. Decimals, turn them into a fraction. Decimals into a percent. Percent into a decimal. Fraction into a percent into a fraction. So we're going to have these three things. We have decimals, fractions, percents, and we should be able to go between all three of those. So if you have a decimal, you should be able to make it a fraction and a percent. Okay? It's the same number, you're just changing the form of it. Okay? It's kind of like states of matter. You have gas, liquid, solid. The way you have a solid water, you have ice. You heat it up, now you have water, which is a liquid. Same, it's just in a different form, okay? So this learning target for 2.1 is to write decimals as fractions and fractions as decimals, okay? So let's get going here. The key to it is place value. When you have a decimal and you want to make it into a fraction, it's going to be what's the place value, and then how do I simplify it? That's the tricky part. Okay, so we have place value. We have our decimal point here, and if we're going to this side of the decimal point, you have tenths, then you have hundredths, then you have thousandths. If you go to the left side, you have ones, tens, hundreds, thousands. Okay? So now, I'm going to make 0.8 into a fraction. So my point here, so it goes right there. 0.8, 0.8. Now I just read what it is. 8 tenths. 8 tenths. Or 8 tens. Okay? 8 tens. So now I've made 0.8 into a fraction. That's all it is. But I see I got two even numbers here. And I can reduce each of those. What I like to do is I take the smallest one, 8, and I figure out all the numbers. 1 and 8, 2 and 4. And then I see, can 8 go into 10? Nope. Can 4 go into 10? Nope. Can 2? Yep. So 2 is my greatest common factor. I divide each by 2. 8 divided by 2 is 4. And 10 divided by 2 is 5. So 4/5. 4/5 is the same as 0.8 or 8 tenths. Okay? I converted this to a fraction, and then I simplified it to its simplest form, which is 4/5. Okay. Let's do another one. 0.28. So my point's there. 28. I always go to whatever number is the farthest to the right. And I say that. So this is 28 hundredths. 28 hundredths. So I put my 28 here. 28 hundredths, or hundreds. 28 hundredths. There we go. There's my fraction. But I can see I can simplify this. Now, I see that it's even. They're both even. So I'm going to take it down 1 to get it to smaller, and then I'll do the greatest common factor. So if I divide this by 2 and this by 2, that gets me 14, and that gets me 50. Now I'm going to take 14, see what my factors are. 2, 7. Okay, that's it. So now 14 doesn't go into 50, 7 doesn't go into 50, 2 is. So I can only cut it in half one more time. Because this is going to get me 7, and that's a prime number, and this is 25. So 28 hundredths is the same as 14 50s, is the same as 7 25s, which is the same as 0.28, or 28 hundredths. Okay? So you just find the place value and you say what the last one to the right is. If it's thousands, I don't have this one down here, but let's just do this one, and I'll make it easy so you don't have to reduce it. Okay, 0.001. The way I would say this is it is 1/1000ths. So 1, I put that number there, and thousandths, or 1/1000s. And I can't simplify that or reduce it. So, okay, so what's the farthest to the right? And you put it into a fraction, and then you simplify. Okay, now let's do this one. It has a whole number to it. So 4.65. This place value here is still the farthest to the right, so that's the key. 4 and, for the decimal we'll say and, 4 and 65 hundredths. So I'm going to have 4 whole numbers, and it's a mixed number, and 65 hundredths. Okay? Now the 4 is good just like it is. I don't touch the 4, but I have to simplify this. So I know 5 goes into each of these. So 65 divided by 5. Okay, you can do it like this if you need to. Equals 13. So I have 13 here. And here I have 20. Okay. Now, a common mistake is that you simplify this and forget the whole number. I can't do that. It's always going to have 4. There's always these 4s. I'm just simplifying this, and I can simplify it down to 13 20s. So, basically what you can do is when you have 4.65, and you say, I got to put it into a fraction form, I see I got 4 wholes. There you go. I can start like that. I know for sure I'm going to have 4 wholes, and then I just have to do this 0.65 like what I did up here, like what I did up here. And when I do that, it gets me to 1320. Okay? So that is how you take any decimal. You might have a whole number. If it has a whole number, it's going to be a mixed number. Any decimal with the place value, you put it into a fraction form and simplify it. Okay? Decimals into fractions, or as fractions. Okay, let's go over here. And we're going to do something I think is easier, especially if you have a calculator. Now, there's 2 ways to do this. We want to turn fractions into decimals, or write fractions as a decimal. This one, if you can get the bottom number to a 10, 100, or 1,000, then you go to your place value and say, oh, it's 0.10th, 100th, 1000th. Okay? So, I know 5, I can get to a 10. And the way I did that is times 2. I have to do the same to the top and bottom. 3 times 2 is 6. So 3/5 is the same as 6/10. And 6/10, just saying it, I know is that. So I converted this to a decimal just like that. Easy peasy. Okay? This one, I know 25 I can easily get to 100 by timesing it 4 times. Times 4, and so I come over here and I do 14 times 4. That gets me 16, 4, 5, 56. 56 hundredths, or 50. 56 hundredths. So, did I say it just to make sure I'm good? 56 hundredths. 56 hundredths is the same as 56 hundredths. I'm good. I'm good. Okay, 102, 250. Now, I could work to get this down to where it gets to 100 or 1,000. If I would get to 1,000, I know this is going to be times 4. This is going to be times 4. 102 times 4 is 102 times 4. That's 408. 408. So if I say this number aloud, it's 408 thousandths. So 408 thousandths. Okay? Perfect. That's one way that you can get it into a fraction, a decimal. This goes to this. This turns into this decimal. This to this decimal. Now this one, if I have a whole number, I have 10. I know I'm going to have 10 wholes no matter what. This is just a fraction. So now I just got to do the 4/5. 4/5, I'm going to get that to a 10 times 2 times 2. That's 8. So 4/5 is the same as 8 tenths. So 8 tenths. So 10.8. Now, not always will it go so easily into a 10, 100, 1,000. Sometimes you might have 7/8, and 7/8 into a can't get that to a 10 or 100. It just is harder. It doesn't come quick. So we know that this line is a division. So we go 7 divided by 8. Now, you can't get 8 into 7, so you have to put a decimal here and a 0. Put my decimal up here. Now, can I get 8 into 70? I can. 8 goes into 70 8 times. 64. Subtract that out. 6. Now, I don't want a remainder or a fraction. I want to keep going to get this into a complete decimal. So I can always add another 0. Okay. 8 goes into 60 7 times. 7 times 8 is 56. Subtract that out. Gets me 4. I still don't quite have it where I have 0 down here. So I'm going to add another 0. How many times does 8 go into 40? 5. Perfect. 5 times 8 is 40. Subtract it out, get 0. I have nothing left here as a remainder, so I have my decimal. So 7/8 equals 0.875. Okay? The other way to do it is on a calculator. And this is nice and easy. You just got to read it just like it is. And you type it in starting at the top, going to the bottom. So if I do 3 divided by 5 equals 0.6. Okay? This one, clear it out. Type in 14 divided by 25 equals 0.56 is what we got. 102 divided by 250 equals 0.408. 0.408. Okay? And then this other one, here, I'll get real close. See if you can see this. So 7 divided by 8 equals 0.875. Okay? So on a calculator, the way to get a fraction to a decimal is you just do it. You do 3 divided by 5. You kind of read it down. This divided by this. And you'll get your decimal. Okay? So that is how you change a fraction to a decimal. And now you know decimal to a fraction. So hopefully with this lesson, by the time you've done the extra practice and all the stuff that goes with it, you'll easily be able to take any number from a fraction to a decimal and a decimal to a fraction.